Hello there, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
The headlines where you are this Monday evening. After a weekend of heatwave grass fires across Kent, a forecast of rain and a warning of flash flooding.
When it's happening and burning, it is very frightening.
Putting the pressure on, new calls for a legal crackdown compelling water companies to clean up their acts. And 3,000 miles and £500,000. The nurse cycling to all 54 children's hospices in the UK. We catch up in Sittingbourne. Good evening. 6 major grass fires over the weekend spread across more than 100 acres of Kent countryside, presenting a huge challenge to the county's fire service. Now at last some rain is forecast, but it comes with warnings of flash flooding because the ground is too hard to absorb heavy rainfall. With more on this, here's Joe Caution.
This stretch of land in Snodland used to be a golf course. Now it's a charred wasteland after being destroyed by a large grass fire, one of several across Kent this weekend alone. Another 25 acres were decimated in what was the 5th fire on Dartford Heath. And this is what's left of some crop fields at Wye near Ashford and at Lyddon near Dover.
When it's happening and burning, it is very frightening. And of course your imagination, you can see it spreading right across the other fields as well.
Challenging over the weekend in terms of how many we had and the size of them, but this has been a challenge we've been dealing with for the past few weeks. The number of fire engines and people that we have at the instance obviously puts a strain on our resources. We have a very well tried and tested process for making sure we spread our resources a bit thinner across the county.
A yellow weather warning is in place for thunderstorms and torrential downpours until Wednesday, which will provide some respite from the extreme heat. But here on this farm, you can just see the damage has already been done and see how dry the ground is here. So much so that cracks have started to appear, some as much as 8 inches deep.
And we've harvested most of the flowers from here. There's 1 or 2 left, and we've had a great oil crop.
The dry weather has been a blessing and a curse for this lavender farm near Sevenoaks, benefiting from a bumper crop this season, but planting next year's is a challenge.
These plants are not quite ready for dry conditions, which the main older plants can really enjoy. And so we've had to come along and water every single plant twice a week ever since we put them in the ground, which was 2 months ago. But we can't get out there to put next year's crop in the ground because if we do, it won't germinate. And so that's a real problem. And we're going to have to keep doing this until it rains.
But even when it does, a downpour or two may not be enough. With concerns from farmers, the impact of this drought could be felt well into next year. Joe Caution, ITV News.
Well, for more on all of our stories today, you can of course go to our website. The address, as ever, itv.com/Meridian.
More news now, and a man who stabbed his partner to death at their home in Canterbury has been jailed for 16 years after admitting manslaughter by diminished responsibility. David Creed, who's 53 and from Long Acre Close, used a carving knife on 50-year-old Catherine Granger before calling the police and an ambulance. His defence was that he was not in his right mind due to severe alcoholism.
A bus caught fire and several people were injured in a collision with a car in Ashington. A 40-year-old woman and a man aged in his 50s who were in the vehicle were taken to hospital following the crash on the A24 on Saturday. The bus driver and 8 passengers were also injured. The southbound slip road remains closed for resurfacing.
Several gems thought to be diamonds have been seized by police investigating a suspected drug case. More than £10,000 as well as jewellery were found at a property in Hove. A 32-year-old man from Hove was arrested on suspicion of money laundering.
More than 20,000 people have crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year. 607 migrants came ashore on Saturday, the 3rd time the total has topped 600 this year. By this point last year, just over 11,300 crossings had been made.
Now, the campaign to protect rural England is calling tonight for tougher targets in law, compelling water companies to clean up their act.
Southern Water was fined a record £90 million after its sewage repeatedly flowed into the region's seas and rivers. But the company is also pioneering new technology to stop harmful chemicals reaching the environment. With more, here's Andy Dickinson.
It's cost £20 million to install new equipment at this wastewater treatment works in Hailsham, coming online at a time when we're perhaps more than ever aware of the need to protect our resources as well as the environment.
The risk, if we don't make these changes and these investments, is that we'll either run out of water. We're already more or less at that point in many parts of southern England, or we'll be dealing with rivers that are unfit for purpose, or that nobody will enjoy. So it's really, important that we get this kind of thing right, and the current conditions that we've got, I think, are just underlining that fact.
This cutting-edge technology stops phosphates used in detergents and fertilisers entering our rivers, threatening our wildlife here, affecting nearby Pevensey. But currently, very few areas in our region legally warrant its use. This is the first time this process has been used in the UK. Chichester and Stodmarsh outside Canterbury are the only areas in the south presently described as nutrient neutral, where such strict targets are in force. And while environmentalists are calling for a far wider rollout, recent government levelling up requirements remain unclear.
It's a huge challenge to match the needs of climate change, to identify the needs of working in a drought situation. But as an industry, we've been long aware of these challenges, and we've been working on them collectively to find the best solutions. So they are built into our processes for water resource management plans, for drainage and wastewater management plans, and that all feeds into the process where we work with Ofwat to identify the funding that we want.
With investment now needed not just to secure that there's enough water left for our natural environment, but that it's of a high enough quality, this may be the start of a vital flow. Andy Dickinson, ITV News, Hailsham.
A man from Crawley has been jailed for attempting to sexually assault a woman in her 70s. Kaspars Grickius, who's 38, was sentenced to 12 months after he touched and attempted to kiss the victim. Grickius had already been convicted in June 2020 for sexual assaults on 4 women at a supermarket in the town. Police say new rules mean he will be subject to a supervision order for a total of 10 years.
A man who invaded the pitch during a women's Euros game in Brighton has been given a 3-year match ban. Jack Cooper, who's 21 and from Burgess Hill, ran on during the quarter-final match.
People travelling in Horsham are being urged to plan ahead as the Parsonage Road level crossing will be closed to pedestrians and drivers from Friday. Network Rail will be running a minibus service while improvements are made to the crossing. It will be closed for 10 days until August the 30th, while the Littlehaven level crossing will be closed for 3 days from Friday.
Older residents facing financial hardship in Folkestone and Hythe could now be eligible to get more help from the council. It's been allocated money from the Household Support Fund extension that will focus on energy bills for people over pension age. Well, vulnerable households are encouraged to apply as soon as possible as funds are limited.
The medical director of South East Coast Ambulance Service is standing down after working at the NHS for 50 years. Dr Fiona Moore was named in the Queen's Birthday Honours last year.
Now, victims of intimate image abuse are calling on the government to respond to recommendations to fix loopholes in the current law.
A review from the Law Commission found that legislation to stop so-called upskirting, down-blousing and revenge porn are inconsistent and not fit for purpose.
It's a change backed by lawyers in our region who want to see new rules to stop people taking or sharing intimate images of others without their consent. Well, to explain more about this, here's Catherine Walker.
The rise of smartphones has brought a new type of image-based sexual abuse, one with traumatic consequences for victims like Alicia. Her world was turned upside down 4 years ago when she discovered explicit videos of herself online.
It makes me really angry. I think that's the main feeling that I've still carried with me is anger. It was a horrendous experience to go through. It was really damaging mentally and physically. I lost a lot of weight. I've struggled to eat. It's not something I ever thought I'd be the victim of. I didn't consent to having any videos taken, so I didn't even realise they were out there.
The latest figures show there's been a huge rise in this kind of abuse. The Revenge Porn Helpline had 4,406 calls in 2021, a 40% increase from 2020. but victims say the law is limited and inconsistent. At the moment, in England and Wales, acts like upskirting and revenge porn are against the law in specific circumstances. But other things like downblousing or sharing fake nudes of someone without their consent aren't criminalised at all. After a government-sponsored review of the existing rules, the Law Commission says change is needed. So you've been looking at the current laws. What reforms do you want to see?
At the moment, there's really a patchwork of offences. There are gaps and limitations. There are inconsistent provisions. That makes the existing offences not fit for purpose. What we've recommended is one consistent definition of an intimate image that will be a crime to take or share without consent, regardless of motivation, and better protection for victims throughout the criminal justice process.
As well as simplifying the law, they want to give lifetime anonymity to all victims of intimate image abuse. But campaigners say victims still face an uphill battle.
The Law Commission's proposals are just the first step. First off, these are recommendations. They may or may not be implemented. And I think for victims and survivors, they want to feel heard and they want to feel like the government is actually doing something about this. And there needs to be investment into survivor services, into infrastructure around takedown requests.
In a statement, the Ministry of Justice told ITV News they will carefully consider the recommendations and respond in due course. But Alicia and other victims worry that criminals will continue to exploit legal loopholes until the law properly reflects the abuse. Catherine Walker, ITV News.
Now you're watching ITV News Meridian. Stay with us, plenty more to come on the programme.
Including Pedal Power, the hospice nurse cycling thousands of miles to raise £500,000 for the care of seriously ill children.
And it's all changed this week as we exchange heatwave conditions for thunderstorm warnings. I'll be in the studio shortly with all the details.
More on all of our stories today, of course, on the website. You can also call us if you have a story idea that you think we ought to be covering. There's the number, 0808 1010 095. And if you'd like to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter. We're on Facebook, and we are, of course, also on Instagram.
Now, women's welfare organisations have told ITV News they're concerned women are choosing to have abortions because of financial worries.
The most recent figures from 2019 show an increase in abortions in the South East, but that was long before the cost of living crisis.
There are now fears even more women will decide to terminate pregnancies with a lack of financial support to blame. Amit Birdie has our report.
The reasons for getting an abortion are often deeply personal, but in a time where the cost of living is increasingly going up, it seems worries about not being able to afford to raise a child are influencing the decisions of women. I spoke to one woman who told me the cost of living crisis is already taking a toll on her family. We've protected her identity and used an actor's voice, but she told me she simply couldn't afford to have another baby.
I found out that I was pregnant very, very early on, and we already had one child who was 15 months at the time, and coming off the back of 6 months of being furloughed for both of us, it just sort of didn't seem feasible financially to carry on, which is really difficult because it was wanted. I don't think anyone ever goes into it without thinking, and it's a really hard decision. But ultimately, I think you know if it's the right thing, and it's horrible and it's hard and it's sad, but then you sort of have to think of the bigger picture.
The rate of abortions in England has been on the rise for some time. In the South East, there was a 14% increase in the number of abortions in 2019 compared to 5 years earlier. But a recent survey showed 60% of women said the cost of childcare influenced their decision to have an abortion. And women from more deprived backgrounds were 3 times more likely to terminate their pregnancy than wealthier women.
1 in 3 women in this country has an abortion. We are hearing more and more stories where financial pressures play a bigger and bigger part in that. And it's not just about whether you can afford to have a child or have another child at this time. And it's not just even about whether you can afford to be pregnant, but it's also about wider structural issues and indirect reasons why that link between poverty and abortion exists.
This issue could lead to economic trouble in the future too, with the country's ageing population and continually declining birth rate.
The answer is simple. If you want the birth rate to climb, you need to fix the childcare crisis. It's forcing women to terminate wanted pregnancies and pushing them further into poverty. It's simply not good enough. We think that childcare should be subsidised from 6 months. It makes no sense that it doesn't start being subsidised for most people until that child turns 3 years old.
The government says they have spent more than £4 billion in each of the past 5 years to support families with the cost of childcare. The number of childcare places available is stable and thousands of parents are benefiting from this support. They say they know there are challenges facing the sector, which is why they are increasing funding to support employers with their costs. But for some women, the costs remain too much.
Just everything's getting expensive and people can't afford to live now. You know, you have to think of the life that you want to give your children and the life that you want to have. And yeah, it's a hard decision.
Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
Well, the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. For more, let's to London and Charlene White.
Keir Starmer outlines his plans to tackle soaring energy bills. The Labour leader says he can save households thousands, but do the numbers add up? After the heat comes the storms. Experts warn heavy rain could cause dangerous flooding. The UK is the first to approve a new vaccine that targets both the original COVID strain and Omicron. And why Norwegian authorities ended the life of Freya the walrus. Join us for those stories and more from 6:30.
In League Two, Gillingham manager Neil Harris apologised to fans following his side's 3-0 defeat at Tranmere. The Gills offered little in the first half and were unable to register a shot on target all afternoon as they suffered their second away defeat in as many games.
It's not a position I like to be in as the leader of the pack to have to apologise, but the performance wasn't acceptable. I can accept not playing well or being undone by really good play, but we got out-fought and out-competed. And I always talk openly and honestly. Everyone knows that by now, and that shouldn't happen for any of my teams.
A goalless draw at Harrogate means Crawley have failed to score during their opening 3 league contests for the first time as an EFL outfit. It could and perhaps should have been 3 points, but it wasn't to be, and the Reds travelled back to Sussex with just the 1.
Now, if you think being a children's hospice nurse would keep you busy, wait until you hear about Francesca Lennon. She has set herself the challenge of cycling between all of the children's hospices in the UK, and there are 54 of them, all caring for 99,000 seriously ill children.
Well, having set off on the 20th of June, she's more than halfway through, making a stop in Sittingbourne at Demelza. That's where Tony Green caught up with her.
With thousands of miles already behind her, Francesca Lennon is on a mission. She's touring all 54 children's hospices in the UK to raise money for all of them. She's dubbed the challenge Chat UK. The Kent leg of her journey saw her setting off in Sittingbourne from Demelza Children's Hospice, with supporters coming along for the ride.
Done 2,500 miles so far. It's 3,200 miles in total. And today we are cycling from Demelza in Sittingbourne to Demelza in Eltham, which is 47 miles.
And everywhere you go, you've been joined by people who want to support you, but also have had personal experience of children's hospices as well. How important is that?
It's hugely important. Like, my vision for Chat UK was to bring people together. That was a really core part of what I wanted to do. And so having people involved and supporting, and people that, you know, work for children's hospices, are supported by children's hospices, join and be part of it, is just the most incredible thing to me. Is that the best photo of me?
A special week dedicated to her friend's son Henry was especially poignant. He died from leukemia in February.
a month after I had the idea for Chat UK, Henry was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, and he's gone through lots of treatment over the last 3 years. But tragically, in February, he passed away. And so it was really, really important to me that he could be a part of this. So my bike's named Henry, and this week is dedicated to him. And he always wanted to help other people, and so I know together with Henry that we'll make an even bigger difference with this challenge.
Hua, Henry's father, an A&E consultant, joined Francesca for the week.
I think for me it's important that we remember Henry and we sort of celebrate his legacy.
You're quite new to cycling as well. What would Henry make of all this?
I'm very new to cycling. This is my 6th week with a adult road bike. And I'm loving it at this point. Henry loved riding as well, and I think if he was with us, he would be riding alongside, and he would be, we're proud of everything that he's done. I'm sure he's proud of his Auntie Francesca and of us as well.
Challenge events are wonderful for people to participate in, and it's really great for raising the profile and really myth-busting those misconceptions about what a children's hospice might be. But the most important thing is to raise those funds so that we continue to offer those vital services that are really needed.
With 700 miles to go, £50,000 has already been raised, but the target she set is £500,000 to support hospices like Demelza, who support so many. Tony Green, ITV News, Sittingbourne.
Oh, we wish them all the best. They're doing really well. And I have to say, Demelza is a wonderful place, really does such good work as well. Now, here's something to make you smile. And Gatwick airport workers were kept on their toes when a pigeon spent time flying around the baggage reclaim area. Now, staff can be seen trying to catch it as it flew around the North Terminal, going back and forth between the 3rd and 6th carousels. Passenger Danielle Lewis filmed it, said, never has waiting for luggage been so exciting.
Everyone's thinking of the same music at this point, aren't they? But we can't sing it because we don't have the rights. A spokesman for Gatwick later said, while professional flyers are welcome at Gatwick, we do request they stick to the airfield. He said in this instance, the airport chose not to charge landing fees.
Oh.
Good story. We like that. Very good.
We do. Well, means New means a frequent flyer, doesn't it? We're going off to New York on its holidays. Holly joins us now. Talk about holidays. It's been like a holiday here with the weather. Beautiful, hot weather. It's all about to change, isn't it?
Yes, we have got some changes in store. So today we were still up at about 28 or 29 degrees, which makes it the 9th day. That's it, the 9th day of heatwave, because here in the southeast we class anything above 27 as being heatwave conditions. So yeah, 9 consecutive days, which has been fairly unbelievable. But now we are all seeing things go off with a flash and a bang potentially. So we've got weather warnings in force, thunderstorm warnings in force at the moment, running out over the next couple of days. But I think for us, Wednesday is probably the greatest chance of seeing them most widely.
So we'll get to exactly what's going to happen in the forecast in a few minutes' time, but why this change?
Yeah, well, great question. So it's all down to the jet stream. Now, the jet stream has a warm side and a cooler side. So when the jet stream is to the north of you, you tend to find yourself in warm air. That's what we've had recently. Take a look at this, though, because now it is dipping its way down to the south. So A, we're finding ourselves on the cooler side of the jet stream, and B, when you get a big dip like that, it causes what we call instability in the atmosphere. And that basically means all the air wants to rise, and when air rises, it cools, it condenses, and you can get these great big thunderstorm clouds stretching up through the atmosphere, and that is what we have got the potential for in the coming days. But this brings the opportunity to talk to you about my favourite weather word, which is petrichor.
Petrichor?
Petrichor.
Spelt?
Petrichor. I wish you'd warned me you were going to say that. And that is the lovely earthy smell you get when you've had a long, hot, dry spell and then it rains. Oh. And it's that lovely, do you know what I mean? That lovely...
Reminds me of holidays in Cornwall when it always rained and I had that lovely smell.
Exactly that, yes. Or holidays in hot countries, you often get it. But I love it, and that's my favourite weather word, so there you go.
Petrichor. We've all learnt something today. Right, let's get a full check on that forecast with the details. Here's Holly.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
So a real change afoot with our weather as we push through this week, losing those heatwave conditions, replacing them with the potential for thunderstorms. You've got a warning force for thunderstorms at the moment. It's valid through tomorrow, Wednesday as well. They could occur at any time, but I think Wednesday is going to be the greatest risk for us to see them most widely. And because we're seeing heavy downpours onto very dry surfaces, it does lead to the potential for flooding, even though of course we do need the rain. Also hail could be a factor as well. And yes, losing this heat and humidity, it is still feeling pretty warm out there at the moment, so very humid into tonight, but things do become fresher as we head through this week. So low pressure then is churning up the atmosphere, delivering this potential for those thundery downpours. And then quieter, I think, by the time we get to Thursday. A weather front heads our way on Friday. That could bring a bit of rain for a time, but it probably won't amount to too much. Out there this evening, the greatest likelihood of any thundery downpours is the further north and west you are. Many of us turn drier through the night tonight, although you could see some working their way in from the channel as we head towards the end of the night. And it's a humid one for tonight, some of us not dropping much below 19, 20 degrees. If you don't see values fall below 20, that's classed as a tropical night, so we could see some spots getting that. And then into tomorrow, we're talking this potential for some further thundery downpours. And again, they bring this risk of lightning, hail and possibly some flooding. Still feeling very warm, I think, where that sunshine comes through, mind you. Our high tide times Brighton, they're 2:51 and again at 3:19. Wednesday, though, brings this greatest risk of those thundery downpours. Do take care.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
What a difference a day makes. We just about the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Yes, I'm back with a late update at around 10:30, but until then from the team, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.